Well, hello, Soma Eastside. Welcome to our latest Soma Conversations. And today I am pleased that Glenn and Susie Johnson are joining us. And Glenn and Susie, tell us how many years you guys have been married.
We've been married 48 years.
48 years. So people say that the first 6 years are the most difficult. So you guys have done that 8 times.
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that, okay. Quick math. You guys tell Soma Eastside. There's probably people tuning in that don't know what you guys do currently for a living, and maybe even just talk a little bit about your story about what you guys have done in the past for life work and ministry.
Okay. For the past 7 or 8 years, we have been what is called Christian conciliators. And so our work is to help people who are stuck in conflict. And most often it's marriage conflict, but we have family conflicts. And we also work with people who have internal conflict and haven't been able to resolve issues within. And so that's what we are doing now. And we are working out of our home. And so our basement is where our offices are. And of course, with COVID, mostly we've been doing Zoom. Previous to that, we were in Brazil for 12 years, teaching in seminary. I guess that wasn't the most immediate. We've been in church. Glenn's been in pastoral work probably, I guess maybe 15 years in the States prior to beginning this work full time. And then prior to that, we were missionaries in Brazil, teaching in the seminary, preparing leaders in Brazil. And prior to that, Glenn was a youth pastor in Portland, Oregon.
Wow. And before that, you were a baseball star at Stanford.
I don't know about the star piece.
Where did you guys meet? Did you guys meet at Stanford?
No, sir. We met in the halls of Centralia High School.
Wow.
So we go way back.
I was a senior and she was a junior. And I mean to tell you, I picked well.
Was it love at first sight? How long did you guys date before you got married?
We dated 4 years. It was pretty much love at first sight. And both of us kind of surprised by that, but that's what happened. And Glenn went off to Stanford. I stayed in Centralia and went to community college and then transferred to San Jose State. Middle of that year, we decided that's enough of that. And we got married. Yeah.
And what are your degrees in?
My bachelor's degree is in music.
Okay.
Music major.
Great. And did you have an instrument or vocal? What?
I was vocal major.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, God used that for the next 30 years in my life in Brazil, in the States, in worship leading, and in Brazil as well, and training, doing some vocal coaching and that kind of thing.
That's interesting. If you've told me that before, I don't know that I remembered that, but maybe next time you could prepare a song for us.
Well, I can sing lots of them right now.
How about you, Glenn? What are your degrees in?
Well, I noticed you didn't ask me to prepare a song. I have a degree from Stanford. The degree says it's political science, but it was really baseball. And I was one of those guys who, other than playing baseball, was a serious student, but had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And then I have 2 degrees, master's degrees in theology and a PhD in adult learning.
Great. Well, over all these years, so school, ministry, teaching, pastoring, and then now being a conciliator. How many marriages have you observed, do you suppose?
I can't answer that question, probably because I did a ton of marriage work down in South America, working with students at the seminary. And I had run into the Book of Song of Songs and started teaching that. And so I just had gobs and gobs of people coming to me. So,
And doing retreats and seminars and that kind of thing.
So more or less, has that been pretty much a constant throughout your life since you guys were youth pastor?
Probably the later years of youth ministry when the youth started growing up and getting married, so that probably would be the beginning, I would say, of when he became involved with marriages.
So that question is a huge setup for the next question, which is what secrets have you seen to good marriages? What are some of the themes you think of when you think, man, that's a building block, or that's a key to a good marriage?
The first secret, I would say, is embodying agape. I mean, just reading through the Bible and reading what it has to say about love and implementing it is without question the greatest secret sauce that I've found.
And to go along with that, the focus on the relationship of me with God as primary, and the relationship of Glenn and Susie as secondary. Because all the time we ask people, when they're in conflict, where is God in the midst of conflict? And they say, oh, God's not in it. I don't even think about God. And so the training of ourselves to realize that God is present all the time. It's we that turn away, and when we do, things go south. And so in the marriage, keeping that primary relationship primary and training ourselves to keep God in the picture more and more and more.
It seems like those two things are connected. Embodying love and putting God first. If someone, I mean, you didn't mention the 5 love languages. You didn't even say, I guess you said love. You didn't say respect, but I'm just thinking about common books people look to. If someone were, I suppose, new to those ideas, what might be a first step for them? Either embodying love or focusing on their relationship with God as a primary.
So I think a way I would recommend, Paul, is to ask the question, what is a legitimate need that my spouse has that I can do that would contribute to her well-being? How can I contribute to her well-being?
So what does my spouse need, and how can I help?
Yes. Yeah. And agape always gives goodness. That's just one fundamental property of agape. Agape is give goodness. So Glenn, open up your eyes, watch Susie, and find ways to give goodness to her.
Now, some people may not know the Greek word agape. How would you define that for them?
It's a very nasty word to define. hard word to translate. But I think maybe I would go with divine love or God's love.
Mm. So a self-sacrificing, godly, thinking of the other person first, permanent love.
That does not have strings attached.
Mm. Mm. Now, Glenn, this is a guy asking another guy. Should I be primarily, I mean, you said that Glenn should be looking for ways that Susie needs help and then helping. If you're not a very good observer, is it okay for the guy to ask his wife, what do you need help with? Or should that come from more of a observing and trying to figure out rather than being direct like that?
I think it is mostly we guys should accept that we are created to be a brother's keeper, that we are created to be a wife keeper, a protector. And in the language of Paul in Ephesians 5:29, we're created to find ways to not only feed and keep her warm, but also to nurture her and keep her heart warm. Those are images of masculinity that we find in the New Testament. And we men, I think, have fallen so far short because of what so many cultures teach about masculinity.
Mm. Mm. So we think more about displays of strength and competence rather than how do I protect and cherish and cause my wife to shine and flourish.
Yep.
Mm.
And one of the greatest enemies of being empowered to agape one another is self-centeredness.
Mm.
It's what do I want? What do I want my spouse to give me? It's very self-focused, and that's why, at least in myself, and as I talk to other women, the power to do that comes from the loving God first, and then saying it's like, God, how do I love you in this situation? Like when there's conflict, when there's difficulty, how do I love you so that I'm then connected in my identity? I'm brought back to my senses, so to speak, and then able to be empowered by God to love when it's hard.
Mm. Mm. You know, I've seen some pretty remarkable breakthroughs over the years with couples, even in the midst of a really strong disagreement that, you know, they're sitting in my office and they're arguing about something, and it's clear that this isn't the first time this topic has come up. But amazing how much it seems to help for them to stop in the moment, in the middle of their argument, and to hold hands and then just take a moment and pray and ask God for help. Help to see the other person's perspective, help with hope, with strength. Yeah.
It's good practice, Paul.
Hmm. Why do you guys suppose this pandemic, the isolation of this year, why has that been so hard on so many marriages?
A couple of thoughts that come to my mind are that we are around each other an awful lot, at least most of us are. And we need some space from one another, but we also confuse being together as being connected. But being together doesn't mean we're connecting well. And so needing space, but then not coming back with meaningful connection. And that's one of the things.
Hmm. So we're spending time together, but really no connection.
Mhm. And becoming irritated because we're with each other so much.
Hmm. Hmm.
An example is that over our marriage, I've focused quite a bit on uh, things that we talk about, uh, taking walks or things like that, to have talks and enjoyable experiences that are cheap, but that are meaningful to us. Having friends over, and those are things that have been treasure tests of beauty and goodness in our marriage. And all of those things are removed from us now. And so when it comes to an evening time, uh, Susie and I have always read books to each other, but we can't read a book all night long.
Hmm.
And we've enjoyed quietly reading to ourselves, but I'm 69. I'm going to fall asleep. it's stuff like this happens, and so as a result, we find ourselves watching more television
Hmm.
to keep awake, and that's fine up to a certain point. But gee whiz, Glenn, you got anything new for tonight? No, and that wears on us.
Hmm.
Yeah, the lack of connection with other people physically. Um,
So one of our big, really sexy romantic ideas right now is to get in our car and drive down to Puget Sound and watch the sunset.
Just to get out of the house.
Just to get out of the house
Yeah.
and get, yes,
Hmm.
getting outside for me is really important.
Hmm.
Looking out and beyond and up and away and reminding myself, no, life isn't all about these walls around me. There's a lot more, and that God is present. And
Hmm. So spending a lot of time inside, slowly getting bored, slowly working through every show on every streaming service that has any interest at all, maybe eating too much or drinking too much, leads us to some place of some mix of boredom, irritation, feeling miserable, and then we end up taking it out on each other a little bit, or just feeling like there's something missing, and we start wondering if it's because we're with the wrong person. What other things can you think of that might explain the difficulties during COVID?
one of the things I believe is that every marriage has mess in it. It has cracks in it. Every person that comes into marriage brings stuff that they haven't worked through. And if we aren't talking about these things, and then we start to experience the negativity and the irritation, suddenly those cracks in the marriage start getting really big. And so ignoring the cracks, and in our normal non-COVID life, we're able to go off and do all kinds of things and distract ourselves and entertain ourselves and plan fun things, and not address the issues. And so I think it just primes the pump for a time like COVID to go, wow, we are so used to being on the go and being able to do all these things and not talk about things has shaken up a lot of people.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So addressing the issues that come up is just so important, because they're there and they're brewing underneath, and they are we don't we think we're suppressing them, ignoring them, but they affect the way we treat each other.
Hmm. So how might we do that in a constructive, safe sort of way? What might be a good first step? Are there questions that we should be asking each other?
I can't prove this, but I think that boredom is a statement that I am not happy with myself right now. And I don't know what to do with myself. Or if I do know what to do with myself, I don't want to. So I think it's fundamentally occurs when I am not secure in why I exist, what my life is to be about, and I'm lost. That's what I think is going on. And so when I am bored, then I'm a wise man if I will take advantage of the opportunity to check in with Susie and say, what are you seeing in me? And let's try to understand me. What is it that why am I losing my moorage here in terms of what I want to accomplish in my life, why I think I exist? So I think it's that kind of talk that can help us a great deal.
So you're saying that when you're bored, it's because you've lost your sense of purpose.
Yes.
That's a good thing to talk about with your spouse. Why are we here?
And probably, as you know, couples often don't talk about what they are feeling. And so, some checking in times of, hey, tell me about a positive emotion you experienced today, and tell me about a hard emotion you experienced today. Something where there's some knowing each other.
Let's experiment with that. Yeah, I don't know that our area is known for good emotional connection. It's possible that we as a society here on the East Side are so busy typically and have so many things going that we have a hard time with talking about emotions. So we ask each other, how are you doing today? And everybody's just fine. But maybe if you guys modeled that, what that would, so if we could just kind of sit in, so we're all, we've all come over to Glenn and Susie's house and we're sitting there and you guys just show us what your routine is like in that regard.
Shall I ask you?
Sure.
Okay. So, honey, last night you seemed, not your normal cheerful self. Would you share with me what was going on, what you were feeling?
Yeah, I had two things that were going on in my mind. One is the ongoing pain in my knee, and just how that gnawing ache is something that bothers me. We both know it's not a 10; it's a 4 or 5, but it's just been going on, and that is something that occupies my attention. But I've also got some pain going on in some relationships that are important to me at church, and I was just mulling over that stuff. And quite frankly, I was mulling it over when I could have been more connected with you.
What is it like when you're in that mulling place of feeling the agitation, I guess would be the word I might use?
For me, it feels to me like there's some buzzing that's going on in my arms and legs, and actually want to move.
Physical agitation.
Yeah, I get some physical agitation, and it's not, the heart of it isn't physical, but the manifestation of it is.
And where do your thoughts tend to go?
If I'm not careful, then I just get on a hamster wheel and I just go over and over and over on the same things, kind of the typical obsession cycle like you and I know about.
spinning
yeah,
that we
yeah.
talk to other people about.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
By all means, I don't want to practice what I preach.
I'll help you.
And I'm terrified by how much I just related to everything you just said there. Other than I haven't just recently had surgery on my knee, but usually it's some diabetic thing that's bothering me at the moment. But well, that was helpful. Just,
Unfortunately, it was very easy.
is that hard for you guys to, in a sense, work up the nerve to ask those questions? You know, sweetheart, you seemed irritable last night. What were you feeling? What was going on with you? Or you seemed somewhere else, or you seemed kind of out of sort. Are those hard questions to ask?
I think in the moment, they can feel pretty scary. Like if it's the next day saying, last night, you're a little, I might be calmer myself, and I may have worked through my own emotions of how I was feeling because of how he was feeling. And but it can be scary. It can feel pretty vulnerable, and some fear of what you might hear. Like, oh, what might it be? That kind of thing, where it's like, okay, I'm going to take the risk here and ask, not knowing. I may not like what I hear, but if I'm going to know my spouse, then I'm going to ask.
Knowing your spouse, is that the only benefit to that exercise? Is that the chief benefit?
I would say no. The way I would go at it is, over our 40 some years of marriage, when for most of our marriage, Glenn admitted things, never confessed a sin to Susie. I think that's true. But in recent years, probably because we're teaching confessing sin over and over, we've learned about it, and we've learned characteristics of a beautiful confession. And we've had to, in order to feel some semblance of integrity, we've had to practice what we preach. And we've learned to go into ourselves, and we've learned to confess sin to each other. And it never is fun. It always kills the pride, but it is so helpful, so good. And we've done it enough times that I think we're much better at it than we used to be. You think that's a fair assessment?
Yes.
So there's hope for people that have maybe gone 30 years without a good confession, to that you can learn something new.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, but I would say, instead of 30, I would say 40.
What it seems like, when there's tension, when there's irritation, when there's other things in life that are making things difficult, that communication is really important in a marriage. Good communication.
Yes.
Being able to talk about how you're doing, what you're feeling, what you're experiencing. You mentioned a check-in, and some of the more healthy couples I know they put it on a night, like it's the Thursday night check-in. How was this last week? How was I a blessing to you in this last week? How can I be a blessing to you in the next week? Just those type of real easy questions. Are there other things that couples can do to improve communication during this pandemic?
Why don't you share with Paul how walking has been significant to us.
We haven't been able to walk together here, but for the past, I would say since 1987, we have been walking many times a week together. And when we do that, it's a combination of praying out loud, talking about things, knowing that God is in the in the mix with us. Sometimes it's the issues that we're wrestling with that we talk about, and those have been marriage building. That's been one of the foundation stones of our marriage, has been the walks that we go on in the morning.
Mm.
In a lot of those walks, on plenty of them, we talk through decisions we have to make or conflicts that we're in, but also in tons of them, we have a little code question. I'm walking with Susie and I said, where were you? Which means, where were you in the Bible? Where were you with God earlier? And then she just gets to chattering. It's very easy. It's life-giving. And so I just can't begin to communicate how grateful I am for what the walks have done, how they've contributed to our marriage.
Yes.
Mm.
And they're very non-threatening. We're outside, we're walking, and so it's not like every once in a while each of us will have something we want to talk about on the walk, but usually it's just we start out and we probably start talking about what we've been in the Word, or we start praying for people, and then it morphs and just carries us places, and it's instrumental in our conversations.
Yeah, you've mentioned a couple good things that I think Soma Eastside people could do regularly. That check-in, emotional check-in, and finding something like a walk that is just enjoyable, non-threatening, good place for those important talks, and maybe even refer back to the first thing you said, Susie, as far as keeping that relationship with God primary. So if you guys are talking about spiritual things, that would reinforce that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people that'll be watching this that have a house full of small children.
Yes.
And a walk with several children may not be as relaxing, and they may feel like the house is so loud and so frazzled. They feel so frazzled because of the kids. Are there particular secrets that you've seen over the years, or good practices for couples that are in that really busy, loud time of life with all these kids, and maybe because of COVID haven't had a date night in a while?
Yeah. One of the things we do suggest to parents, because it's so easy to just you're just spinning with all the demands of the day, and then by evening it's just, I'm so tired, I just want to veg, that kind of thing. And so we've encouraged couples to, once those kiddos are in bed, and help each other get them there, carve out like 15 minutes where you say, we're going to sit down together, and maybe we'll have a cup of tea or a glass of wine or something that feels kind of special, and that we're going to treasure that as our time. And don't make it so big that it becomes impossible. Start small, and you may increase it if you're able, but at least you're saying, no, this is our time. This is special. This is when we get to, and you decide are you going to share a highlight and a low light of the day, or something where you're sharing something meaningful and not watching TV, not looking at your phone, but with each other.
That's really good.
A recommendation I have may not work for families that have more kids than we did. We had 2 kids. Seemed to us like there was plenty of noise.
They're big kids.
But when our children were in elementary school, I started the practice of putting the kids in dilemmas that were relevant to them, that they could understand. And so, like,
What would you do if?
yeah, like, what would you do if you're out in the playground and some kids are saying words that you don't understand, but you can tell right away that they're bad words? How are you going to respond to that? So I put the kids in scenarios like that around dinner time, and we just never stopped until the kids went off to college. And so our memories are that dinner time conversations were just the best. I mean, rich stuff. And one of the rules of these scenarios was that mom and dad could ask questions, but we would never weigh in. We think that you are wrong. We think that you are right. That just wasn't what that time was for. The time was to give our kids the opportunity to think through dilemmas when they were in a safe environment. And it just made for I did look upon those dinner conversations with great fondness.
That's so good. And such a great reminder. I think one of the strengths of Soma is the table. I almost think if we didn't have a fancy S as a sign for Soma, it'd be a table, just because of how much beauty and how much gospel is talked about and experienced at the table. That love, that welcoming everyone around the table, the communion that's just there. Because when we're there, when believers are at that table and we talk, it's inevitable that Jesus comes up in word or deed. And I think that also can be true for families. I know that dinner time was an absolute joyful. It was a time to almost always highs and lows for the kids, or I don't think we ever got as creative as dilemmas. But it was a great time to talk to kids, and then often it would proceed to a game after dinner, or even the joy of playing loud music and cleaning up together. So, yeah, that's a great thing that people could take advantage of even during this lockdown.
Yeah, making it a family. This is what our family does, and so it's the belongingness and the sense of this is where I am safe, where I'm comfortable, where I'm heard and loved.
Yeah, that's good. Well, if people are experiencing difficulty, if they're feeling like that their marriage has really been tested during this time of isolation, and they need some help with discussing issues, with maybe learning communication skills, do you guys have availability at the moment if people want to contact you and just ask for help?
We do, and with Glenn's surgery, things slowed down quite a bit because we just put it on a halt, and so we're picking back up. But we definitely have time in our schedule.
And they could, in a sense, experience what I'm experiencing right now. These appointments can happen over Zoom.
Oh yes, we've been doing almost exclusively Zoom for a while now.
Okay.
Hopefully moving forward a more physical connection, but right now it's been Zoom.
What type of things do you most often talk about with married couples? Are there certain topics that you guys cover on a regular basis?
Well, it's interesting because they will come in with a topic, but really under the topic are the real issues of, and so we always get down into, okay, tell us what you are feeling right now. What are you wanting? Not what you'd like to everybody think you want, but what you're actually in that moment when your emotions are hot. And what are you believing right now?
Hmm.
Um, and it's not what you'd like to say. People just think that you're believing. Well, I believe that Jesus is with me. Well, in that moment, it's actually something else. It's something that is driving the hot emotion and the desires that are displeasing to God. And so the issues themselves, it's really about the meaning that is happening with the way things are being said that is at the bottom. So finances, sex, raising kids, those are topics that are important. But underneath them are the meaning that people hear, perceive, and meaning that people intend, and that is underneath. What would you add to that?
Well, I think I'd like to give an example. So, Paul, I'm going to assume that 2 or 3 times in your years and years of marriage with Catherine that you have gotten angry at her.
She never deserves it, but yeah, it's possible.
Yes,
it's possible.
So, if you were to start asking yourself, what do I want when I'm angry at her? I think you are going to get led to the conclusion at that moment you want to hurt her. If you didn't want to hurt her, you would not get angry at her. And boy, is it no fun. It is not fun at all when I'm no longer angry to go up to my wife and say, I need to confess something to you because I got angry. These were my beliefs. And my desire was at the moment that I wanted to hurt you. I don't want to hurt you now, but I did then. Make sense?
Yeah, that's painful.
Yep.
But yeah, that makes sense. Mm-hmm.
We might even start confessing more often.
Yeah. Maybe even something more substantial than, boy, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry if that hurt you.
Sorry, I lost my cool. Yeah. Yeah. You're saying that real confession has to do with confessing wrong beliefs, Glenn?
That I am, sir.
And our motives.
The
pain we cause.
Yeah, that type of confessing might change your heart a bit.
Yeah, and if Deuteronomy 6, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and love him with all of your heart, all your soul, all your strength, all your mind, assuming that's true, which it most certainly is, then we have to learn to love God with the way we think, the way we feel, the way we desire. We've just got to bring that into ourselves. Otherwise, we're missing the most fundamental commandment that exists in the Bible. That sounded like Paul Dean.
Well, it's just a lot deeper than, what are 5 good ways to improve my communication with my wife?
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
So people do
probably more helpful
right away when they meet with us that we're known for going pretty deep and getting at the issues that are really causing the problems. So,
yeah. Well, I certainly can't on a video like this tell the congregation who specifically you guys have helped over the years, but it's a large number, and you guys have been a blessing to an awful lot of Soma people, including their their current lead pastor. So so I'm grateful. And what's a good email for you guys if they want to kind of start that conversation as far as meeting with you guys?
I would say give them mine. We have a website that's greentwig.org, and people can go on that, and through that they can an email will be sent to our Green Twig account. But I am
Right.
very happy to receive emails on my account as well, which is Susie, SUSIE .Johnson, JOHNSON.GJ@gmail.com.
Might be a great place to start. And of course, they can send me an email at paul@somaeastside.org, and I'd be happy to forward it along as well. I'll also say this, Soma Eastside members, that if you would like to meet with Glenn and Susie, and the budget's in a bad place at the moment, and you don't have any margin, please contact me at the church, and we do have a fund available. So don't let finances stop you, but just encourage you, especially if you're in a marriage where you haven't ever seen a counselor together. It's good to do work like this, to talk to Glenn and Susie. And I just called you a counselor. I know you're a conciliator, but it's good to do foundation work from time to time. I think we can just kind of skate along for years, if not decades, without talking through really important issues. And if your marriage is in good shape, it'll make it stronger. If your marriage is in a weak place, it'll make it stronger. And I don't know any couples in my life that couldn't use a little bit of strengthening, especially in this year. Yeah. Well, thank you both for joining me. Thank you for having this conversation with me. I feel moderately convicted, but I sure appreciate you guys, your willingness to go deep and to see it as a life calling to help people strengthen their marriages. So thank you for your time today.
It's our pleasure, Paul.
Yes,
Always.
thank you very much.
Yeah. All right, Soma, good talking with you today. Stay in touch. And I think the summary really could come right back to where we started, which is that some keys to a good marriage, to a successful marriage, is keeping God first, primary, which will lead to strength in that secondary relationship, you and your spouse. And the second is focusing on embodying agape love, which is divine love, self-sacrificing, think of the other person first, permanent, strong love. So with those words, we'll close. Thanks for joining us today.